The World Cup starts in 3 days' time, and alone amongst the home nations, England has a fighting chance. But what baggage is English football carrying to South Africa?
English football is groaning under the weight of unsustainable debt.
These days, red is the colour of the balance sheet at many clubs, especially our biggest.
Man U have got somewhere in the order of £750 million of debt. That has got to be eliminated, and eliminated quickly.
We reveal yet more debt Manchester United's owners would rather you didn't know about.
These are people who tell us not to worry about Manchester United's debt because they're great businessmen and because debt is part of business. Actually, in their core business in the US, they got it absolutely wrong.
Tonight, can our national game wean itself off its addiction to debt? Or will the government be forced to step in and save the game from itself? Some talk of Argentina and some of Germany, but there's only one team worth shouting about: Tranmere Rovers FC.
It's a day when only 3 points will do to put Rovers' destiny back in their own hands.
There's John now.
Bye, Daddy.
All aboard the Tranmere Express. It's the fag end of the season, and the Sweeney family is off to the mother of all relegation battles. Tranmere Rovers against Exeter City. Tranmere, on the fashionable west bank of the Mersey, is the family club.
Because we are the famous TRFC. Tranmere! Princeton Park, the home of Tranmere Rovers. I'd be a liar if I'd said that I've been a religious supporter of Tranmere Rovers all my life. It was my father's team. But when my dad died, I became the Tranmere Rovers fan in the family. And that's the thing, it's not just a business, it's a family thing. It's more than a corporate entity.
Referee Mr. Eltringham gets this one underway.
Football is a community thing, but it's also a business, and especially in the leagues above Tranmere, it's riddled with debt. In the last 10 years, 34 clubs have gone to the wall, and now many fans are asking, who will go under next?
The idea that football can be left to its own devices has taken us to this point where actually I'm very, very fearful that in the current economic climate there will be clubs going out of business, left, right and centre, because there's nowhere else to go.
Leaving Tranmere, crossing the Mersey for the iconic clubs, you find English football is in the red. What's going on in the beautiful game?
The mighty Liverpool Football Club, up for sale and nudging £400 million worth of debt.
West Ham, 100 million in debt. Fulham, 200 million in debt. Arsenal, 400 million in debt. In total, Premier League clubs, the world's richest football showcase, owe £3.4 billion between them, more debt than all the other clubs in Europe put together.
Business people do not operate the same way in football, and football clubs, the heart rules the brain. And it has with me at times, I have to admit that, but it's got to stop. It's unsustainable, the debt in the Premier League.
Last season, the unthinkable happened. Portsmouth, a Premier League club who got to the FA Cup final, went into administration, owing £138 million. Dave Whelan thinks more will follow if clubs don't get a grip.
I've just had a meeting with Roberto, our manager, and I've just said this football club from now on will break even. Every single season it will break even. Whatever comes in can go out. But we are having no more debt, we're not borrowing anything, and I think we've all got to get realistic about it.
Johnson, another!
But are they being realistic about borrowing at the most famous club in the world?
That's the moment Old Trafford has been waiting for since 1967.
In recent times, Manchester United may be unequal champions of football, but they are also unequal champions of debt.
Manchester United is probably the biggest club in the world, but it's worse off than Tranmere Rovers. It's got debts of £700 million, and that makes thousands and thousands of fans less than happy. And they're not just unhappy, the fans are getting angry.
Angry at the debts, the owners of Manchester United, the Glazer family from America, have loaded onto the club.
What's wrong with the Glazers?
Well, the fact of all the debt they're putting us in.
They're taking money out of the club.
They're taking 75p out of every pound out of the club. It's going to run out sooner or later.
Who's going to pay for that debt? The likes of the fans on the street by everything going up, increased prices.
Until 2005, Manchester United was one of the few clubs entirely debt-free. And then along came Malcolm Glazer, affectionately known back home in the US as the Leprechaun. We couldn't find an actual leprechaun, so instead, here's a garden gnome, cunningly disguised. Malcolm has his very own pot of gold, a business empire worth, some say, $2.4 billion.
Malcolm Glazer has a good track record of success in business. He's proven himself to be a self-made, at least multi-millionaire, possibly billionaire.
Malcolm is now 82, so United is in the hands of his 6 children, Joel, Brian, Avram, Edward, Kevin and Darcy. All directors of the club, Team Glazer, are a bit on the reclusive side. They rarely do interviews. So we've substituted them too.
I've only met them when they've been here for matches.
What are they like? What did you make of them?
They didn't show a lot of passion for the game, but whether they've got it or not, I don't know. But they seem very nice people.
Manchester United cost £800 million, but the Glazers didn't even pay half of that out of their own pocket. They borrowed more than 500 million quid and banked on the club and its fans being able to pay off their loans. It's called a leveraged buyout. When the Glazers first took over, some fans gave a considered view of its merits. The proud new owners left Old Trafford in a style not normally associated with billionaires, hiding in the back of police vans. Since then, they've kept their heads down, but we're told the Glazers are committed to success on the pitch, with plenty of cash available for players. The Glazers' takeover of United has already cost £426 million in interest charges and bankers' fees just to service their debt. Some question the morality of the family's approach.
I don't think anybody can be satisfied with how Manchester United are being run, because I think we're talking there of £750 million worth of debt. That can't be the right thing to do and cannot be the right thing for professional football in UK.
Right or wrong, it seems to suit the Glazers. They say they can afford it. They've certainly made United more profitable. Shiny new commercial contracts, a bigger global following, more TV cash. Branchester United is doing very well, thank you very much. Neither the Glazers nor anybody else at Manchester United would be interviewed for this programme. United's chief executive recently defended the Glazers' record.
The owners that we have at Manchester United have been true to their word since they took over the club in 2005. They've brought commercial expertise and commercial benefit to us in a number of areas, and we've seen our revenues grow significantly.
He can say that again. Ticket prices have risen by more than a third since the takeover. If it wasn't for the fans, the Glazers wouldn't be able to afford United. But luckily for the owners, the fans keep on coming.
Come on, United!
You don't get your ashes scattered at Tesco's, but you do at a football club because it's one of those things which gives life meaning. And I think it's just morally wrong for people to be asked to spend more and pay more as a result of that noble feeling, simply because somebody else thinks that they're suckers. And that's exactly what's happened at Manchester United.
I'm a service engineer and I have to scrimp and scrape to get here, and nobody's going to come here and stop me getting to support the club that I love.
But what are they complaining about? Under the Glazers, United has been extraordinarily successful on the pitch, winning 3 league titles, 3 league cups and the Champions League. Brilliant! But to some fans, that's beside the point. When Ronaldo was sold for 80 million quid last summer, fans noted he wasn't replaced by another star player. Worries about United's piggy bank began to grow.
Green and gold scarves, £2.50. Green and gold, £2.50.
Then this January, fans erupted. Green and gold, the biggest revolt English football has ever seen. 158,000 have signed up so far. United fans have abandoned red and white, the club strip, reverting back to the colours the team wore in 1878. Even football's #1 fashionista realised his wardrobe wasn't quite complete. The club dismisses green and gold campaigners as a vocal minority. So what was it that made the fans angry? This bond document. In January, the bond raised 500 million quid for the Glazers to rejig United's debts. But city rules meant the club's books were laid bare for all to see. The Red Devil lay in the detail.
The way I would assess the Glazers' ownership of Manchester United is to look at how much money they've put into the club versus how much they've taken out. And they've put nothing in, and they've taken huge amounts of cash out.
We want Glazer out, and we want Glazer out!
What really stuck in some throats was the revelation that in 2008 the family, billed as billionaires, had personally borrowed 10 million quid from United, the world's most indebted club. But even worse for supporters, the bond allows the Glazers to take out yet more cash to pay off their debt. This year, that could top £100 million.
The problem with the bond issue is that it's opened the door to Manchester United's vault. It's allowed the Glazers to drive a forklift truck in, load up with cash and take it out.
So why would the Glazers want to take money out of United? Well, you don't find the answer to that question here in Manchester. To find out, you've got to leave Old Trafford and go on a journey. 208 miles, to be precise. To even older St James's here in London. We've tracked down United's money men to this building, behind me. It's ever so discreet. In fact, it's easier to find the MI6 building than this one. But up there, is there an elephant in the office? Payment in kind debts, or PICs. A hangover from the takeover, the 200 million quid PIC debt is owed to hedge funds. The interest rate will soon hit a whopping 16.25%. The Glazers say they're comfortable with the PICs, but if they fail to pay them off, they'll lose the club. United fans have always been assured that the PICs were the Glazers' problem.
We don't wake up worrying about the PIC interest, we don't worry about the PIC repayment. That is something that the family, the owners, put in place, and they will ensure is repaid or is part of their overall financial planning in due course. But that's nothing to do with the club.
But sources close to the Glazers have told us that the family may use United's cash to pay off the PIC debt in the future.
So how can that have nothing to do with the club?
That matters, because if you add in the PICs, then United's debt payments would go up from 45 million quid a year to almost 80 million quid. You could buy another Ronaldo with that. In a statement, Manchester United told us that the club stands by everything David Gill told BBC Radio, and that the PIC debts have no recourse to the club's assets.
We're very confident that the business model we have in place will be secure and will ensure the club can continue to compete at the top of football for many years to come.
Supporters have a simple solution to the Glazers' ownership. They want to buy the club themselves, or at least that's the dream.
If Manchester United fans pull this off, we draw a line in the sand and say actually fans can control clubs, and we'll start to roll back on some of these changes which have so damaged the game over the last 20 years. This really is the battle to end all battles. It's the big one.
There are, though, a few problems for the fans who want to run United.
Public criticism is like water off a duck's back to Malcolm Glazer. Will the Glazers just go away? No, the Glazers will not just go away.
They're up against one of America's most hard-boiled dynasties.
This is a businessman, and in business, what talks is money. That's the currency. Emotion is not the currency, posters are not the currency, and campaigns are not the currency.
Enter the Red Knights.
This is it. This is what we've been waiting for the last 5 years. These are serious people involved in the Red Knights group, but they're people with a passion for Manchester United and the finance to back it up.
The Red Knights are a round table of wealthy but secretive United fans fired up by the green and gold campaign. They want to put the Glazers' reign to the sword. But last Wednesday, exit the Red Knights. The Glazers, who claim they'd already turned down a bid of $1.5 billion for United, said, "We're keeping the club."
If the owner of the house doesn't want to sell it, it's not for sale.
The Red Knights retreated, declaring United overpriced. They weren't willing to pay a king's ransom to tempt the Glazers to go. So it's back to the round table, instead of United's boardroom table, for now. So what, if anything, could persuade the Glazers to sell? It's really not as if they need the cash, or do they? I've come to the US to find out if there really is a pot of gold in the leprechaun's backyard. This is where Malcolm Glazer lives, a mansion backing onto the sea in Palm Beach, Florida. They call it Billionaire's Row. As befits a man billed as the world's 400th richest person.
Everybody says the Glazers are billionaires. Well, fair enough. This is Palm Beach, and Malcolm Glazer owned not one, but 2 beachfront properties in the really swanky private bit down there. But last year, he sold one for $24 million.
The Glazers also offloaded one of their companies for $74 million. Why did they do that? The family declined to comment. Is it because the Glazers might be struggling to keep their head above water? Let's look at the Glazers' shopping mall empire, First Allied Corporation.
This place is one of the Glazers' shopping malls in Houston, Texas. As you can see, it's furiously busy. The sound you're listening to is that of cash tills going ka-ching, ka-ching. Not. In fact, the place is more than half empty. It's losing money big time. What are the numbers for this particular place?
Our estimation right now is that they have an operating income about $500,000 a year. meaning that's how much rent they receive annually from the tenants. And their debt service right now, the amount that they pay to the bank is about $750,000. So we're estimating right now that they're feeding the property about $250,000 a year.
And this shopping mall is worth $8 million. The mortgage, $9 million. They call that negative equity. That's not good news in a recession.
No, it's not. And with falling rents and disposable income falling as well in America, it's not going to get any better.
That's one shopping mall in trouble. What about the other 63 the Glazers own across the US?
The business is struggling. It's because of the recession. They took out very large mortgages on very inflated valuations. It's like taking out a 95% mortgage on your house just before the housing market crashes.
Meet Andy Green. In his day job, a financial analyst. He's been burrowing into the Glazers' shopping centre borrowings. But the bad news for the Glazers? Guess which team and campaign he supports.
The vast majority of these mortgages were issued by Lehman Brothers, who of course were the great disaster of the credit crunch. People like me can go and look at, in quite a lot of detail, at those mortgages and at the shopping centres that they're secured on. And you can see the rents, and you can see how much the interest costs, and you can see when they start making repayments and so on.
The original mortgage documents are also available for public scrutiny in county courthouses in America. We've done our own research, and Andy Green's work stands up. On 63 out of the 64 shopping malls the Glazers own, we found a mortgage. And the debt in total, $570 million US.
And that's a bob or two in anyone's language.
$500 million worth of debt is fine if you can meet the payments. But the paper trail suggests the leprechaun is sitting on a pot of fool's gold. Almost half of the Glazers' shopping malls are on a watch list. That means the banks are worried about getting their money back.
The Glazers have called the US property market appallingly badly. These are people who tell us not to worry about Manchester United's debt because they're great businessmen and because debt is part of business and because they can manage the cycle. Actually, in their core business in the US, they got it absolutely wrong.
Green has discovered that 4 Glazer shopping centres have already gone to the wall. The latest, Crosswoods Commons, in Columbus, Ohio, went under in February this year. The Glazers had a mortgage of $3.7 million, but it's no longer worth anything like that.
The property currently is on the market for $1.5 million asking price, and most likely will sell for even less than that, which is substantially less than half the original mortgage.
Commercial property prices have collapsed across America.
We've seen this happen a lot where these loans now are underwater and the loan amounts exceed the actual market value of these properties, of these commercial properties. We've seen this all over the market.
When the Glazers paid £800 million for Manchester United, they borrowed roughly $500 million of that and settled the rest of the bill with their own cash. Andy Green's research reveals that as the Glazers bought United, they borrowed a lot of extra money on the back of their shopping mall empire.
At the time when they suddenly had to present a huge amount of cash over here in the UK, they borrowed a huge amount of extra money in the US. And publicly, they didn't buy anything else that year. There is no other record of them buying another business, a big business. So I think one has to really ask, was the cash they put into Manchester United just debt, but from somewhere else?
We asked the Glazers to comment on their shopping mall debt. They declined.
We got the best team in the whole world.
The family's other big US business is the American football team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 2003 Super Bowl winners. Since the Glazers' takeover of United, the Bucs have had one of the lowest wage bills in the league. In modern sport, if you don't spend, you lose. And that's what the Bucs have been doing.
Whether there's a causal relationship or not, there is the perception that when the Glazers bought Manchester United and incurred a significant amount of debt, the spending that we used to see over on the Bucs side dried up. there is definitely a feeling or a belief that the attention is not on the Bucks.
The Glazers deny this, saying money is not an issue at the Bucks. But guess what? They've got debt there too. Mortgages of almost $100 million. The Glazers give every appearance of being loaded. Two of the brothers live here on this fancy private island in Tampa. And, very handy, their speedboat, Red Football. The Glazers might proclaim their assets to be worth a couple of £1 billion, but they are, without doubt, debt billionaires. If you add their American debt to their British debt, we've discovered the Glazers owe a staggering 1.1 billion quid. Yes, that's £1,100 million. But you do have to give the Glazers some credit. They might be big borrowers, but they're also canny savers too. With a little help from the British taxman. Because the family have loaded United with debt, the club is no longer troubled by corporation tax. They call it tax efficiency, but UK PLC has lost out already to the tune of roughly 80 million quid. So while we face rising taxes, United, the club that likes to boast it's the most profitable in the world, won't be paying corporation tax anytime soon. So how on earth did this happen? How could the club that epitomises English football around the world end up being owned by tax-avoiding, debt-laden entrepreneurs with no obvious passion for the game? Surely someone somewhere must be regulating English football. What about the Football Association? What's their view of leverage buyouts or the biggest single problem facing the English game, debt? Would they give us an interview? No. So what about the Premier League? What do they think about leverage buyouts and debt? Would they give Panorama an interview? No. Instead, in a joint statement, the FA and Premier League said clubs already have to submit their accounts and prove they don't have debts to the taxman or other clubs.
English football will continue to consider introducing regulations that balance the long-term sustainability of clubs against the ongoing promotion of a successful model that continues to attract investment. The FA and the Premier League fully support sustainable, competitive and healthy club football.
To date, what have those at the top of the game actually done to tackle debt? According to one of the Premier League's inner circle, Sweet FA.
We haven't been regulating debt at all. I think it shows up with Portsmouth. Now we have to have rules and regulations and we all have to agree what they are and we've all got to abide by them. Now how these controls will come in place, I think it's yet to be decided and discussed. But make no mistake, the Premier League and the chairman are aware that we have to control our debt.
So what about the government? Football fans might be reassured by the new sports minister, Hugh Robertson, who said before the election he'd step in if the game doesn't deal with debt and other footballing issues like transparency by the end of the summer. Would he give us an interview? No. The minister's press office told us that for now his top priority is to focus on England's bid for the 2018 World Cup.
I think it's very, very serious. There's a lot of clubs with a hell of a lot of debt. It can't carry on. It has to stop.
Can the Glazers really keep servicing their debt without breaking the bank or the club? Until somebody in authority acts, it's business as usual down at Old Trafford. And there is nothing to stop another set of entrepreneurs taking over your club and loading it with debt.